A very warm welcome to you. Welcome to K24 this morning. My name is Jeff Mote. It's a chilly morning right here in the capital city. Don't know how it is wherever you are. You can get in touch with us and let us know. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. And even as you do that, we'll also be discussing the big stories of the day right here and getting some analysis and perspective on it as well. You can chime in on that conversation as always. And in case you haven't gotten yourself a copy of your People Daily, you don't need to rush out in the drizzle, in the rain to try and get your vendor to get that copy to you. You can get it from the comfort of your home. If you're getting us from the office, right there in your office as you get your morning cup of tea, and you get it straight to your phone for only 10 shillings. The number that you need is star 550 star 4 hash. Once again, that number is star 550 star 4 hash. Dial that number and get yourself a copy of your People Daily straight to your phone right across this country. It's brought to you by the People Daily and Safaricom. And as you do that, don't forget, you don't need any data for that. You don't need any mobile app for that. Just that number that we've given you, star 550 star 4 hash. Dial it and get yourself a copy of your People Daily. There are very many stories for us to discuss. Let's look at the front pages and the headlines that you're waking up to this morning. And really, when you look at it, it's really one story, one headline that has different ways to look at it, and two personalities, of course, key people of interest on the front page of that particular story. Front page of the PD, outrage over police brutality. Ruto, Raila and top lawyers condemn arrest and detention of senators, say act threatens to reverse country's democratic gains. That is front and center, of course, after the arrest of 3 senators Sunday evening, coming into Monday morning as well. That story can be found in your copy of your People Daily therein. Also in the PD, matters international politics, as the Democratic Party has its convention online, virtually on that one. Michelle Obama rallies the U.S. against Trump rule. Former First Lady urges voters to turn in large numbers and send home President who she said only succeeded in dividing the nation. That story can be found in your copy of your People Daily as well. Also, Ouko's brother takes many secrets of minister's death to the grave. That story can be found on page 13 of your People Daily. He is the one who said he actually knew Robert Ouko's killers, but never actually did divulge those particular details, and that story can be found in your copy of your People Daily. We move it right along to the front page of the Standard now. On the front page of the Standard, same two people on the front page right there, former PM Raila Odinga and Deputy President Dr. Ruto. Stop the madness, say Raila and Ruto. ODM leader and Deputy President condemn senators' arrests. Raila warns attacks are clawing back democratic gains and urges restraint. Ruto criticizes use of force to intimidate and blackmail leaders. And Senate team meets today to break revenue stalemate. That story can be found in your copy of your People Daily, of your Standard rather, as well on page 6, 7 and 8. With all the details therein. And also, as we talk about the COVID millionaires, some billionaires as well, how COVID bailout favored the rich. Wondering why the billions released by Treasury to insulate Kenyans against coronavirus didn't reach you? Then you must be among the majority poor, says the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data. And that story can be found on page 2 of your Standard today. Also in your Standard, Kenya's shining star wows the world. Kenya's Umrah Omar is one of 19 heroes among 16 countries who will be recognized by the United Nations today for helping the poor in Lamu County access health services. That story is in detail on page 10 of your Standard this morning. Moving on to the front page of the Daily Nation, and like we spoke about it earlier, it's all about Ruto and Raila criticizing state over arrests. In a rare unity of opinion, Deputy President ODM leader condemns strong-arm tactics that we've seen played out right there, talking about it being an ominous sign. The rounding up of senators in the dead of the night by police to coerce their vote and rising cases of government contempt for parliament and courts are chilling signs of a return to Kanu-style authoritarianism. That story can be found as well in your copy of your Daily Nation today. All the details therein as well on page 4 of your Daily Nation therein. As you look at that, of course, also keeping a keen eye on COVID-19 and the numbers and the spread on that particular issue. Counties near Nairobi are new COVID-19 hotspots, reports the Daily Nation. The Nairobi metropolitan area is the new epicenter of COVID-19 infections. This emerged as a virus caseload in Kiambu surpassed that of Mombasa, pushing the number of confirmed cases across the country to 30,636 and having 487 deaths. That story is in detail in your copy of your Daily Nation. You can find that story on page 7 of your Daily Nation. Front page of the Star, same persons of interest right there as well. Raila Ruto unites to rebuke cops over senators' arrests. DP says Kenyans did not elect Jubilee to bully citizens. Odinga warns against clawing back hard-won democratic space. And that story can be found right there in your copy of your Star this morning. And finally, from page of your Business Daily, Nakumatt ex-CEO loses 2 billion shilling assets to lender. Bank first to seize Atul Shah's property over the collapse of debt-ridden retailer. And that story can be found in your copy of your Business Daily right there. It's front and center, and a key story of interest on that particular front. So as you can see, really, even as we wait to see how this particular issue will be sorted out, we have a team in place, and hopefully they get to the bottom of this matter and get some consensus, some middle ground as to how this revenue will be allocated. The big question is it a technical issue? Is it a political issue? And who decides when this round and round circus that we've seen playing out really ends? We discussed that. We have a lot of analysis that we'll be having in studio as well, and we want your opinions. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. The WhatsApp number scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Welcome aboard. This is your newspaper review. And welcome back. Let's get to my panel. In studio, joined by Dennis Anyoka. He's an advocate of the High Court. Good morning, Dennis.
Morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've been away for a couple of weeks.
Yes, about 2 weeks or so.
Is everything okay? Is everything fine?
All is fine.
You and yours?
We've braved the cold and the COVID. We are doing well.
Yes, fantastic stuff.
Yes,
she's always here every week. She'll make sure she's here. Gloria Roba, she's a youth policy analyst and expert as well. Good morning, Gloria.
Morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana. Welcome to the show.
Asante.
Asante sana. And getting us and joining this conversation via Skype, it's Justice Minor. He's a governance expert. Morning, Mr. Minor. Welcome to the show.
Morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana. We have one big story here that is taking different angles when you look at all of the dailies right now, and it's the utterances made by former PM Raila Odinga and Dr. Ruto, Deputy President of the country. Dr. Ruto tweeting about it, a statement by Raila Odinga on this one, and everyone talking about it being a rare show of unity of opinion between these two. What do you think about these particular statements made by these leaders? Then it's just a coincidence that this is what happened and they had to speak about it?
Jeff, I think for starters, we all agree that police brutality is unacceptable in a civilized nation such as ours. We have been making progress as a country, even changing the laws, reforming the police, trying to change it from a police force to a police service. And we were hoping that in this kind of time, at this level, we should not see police acting without regard to the laws. But this is not a surprise. We have had consistently from 2017 police acting against the established canons and procedures, what we expected to be the laws of the country and to be complied with. We have seen police arrest innocent protesters. People who are peacefully protesting, they're being arrested. We have seen police use excessive force to demonstrators. We have seen a lot of people being killed by the police. And apart from Law Society of Kenya, which has been making a lot of noise about this and trying to, as much as possible, move to court and get orders against individual police officers, most of the political class has been quiet. But I agree with you that it is strange that William Ruto and Raila Odinga agree on such an issue. I think as a politician, from where I sit, I find it interesting. Remember, Raila Odinga has his own profile. He has always been a person who speaks out and speaks so loudly against all ills, till the handshake happened.
Right.
For the handshake, he has been a very quiet man, mellowed. Some of us even imagined that he could be thinking of exiting active politics. When we see him coming back and agreeing with Ruto, then we start wondering whether he has just discovered the government is having ills or there is a problem.
Right.
The paradox in all this is that William Ruto is part of this same government.
Right.
He's a deputy president in the Jubilee administration, which forms government. And when he is accusing, talking about police brutality, which is okay, but he sounds very helpless.
Right.
And we could have expected as a deputy president to even have ability to some level to cause influence and stop some of these activities because he's part of government. We would expect him to go hard on some of these issues. So there is really a problem. I think for me, the statement is okay, but it's purely for a show.
Gloria, when you look at this one, we really wouldn't have expected these leaders to say anything different. Why is it making front page news? Because I don't think any leader worth their salt would actually support what the police did on Sunday coming into Monday. Why is this news? It's the most common sense thing any leader would have said.
It's news because there's an expectation that if you are on a certain political divide, common sense should just be out of the window. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually surprised that my colleague Dennis is talking about, he's shocked to see that Deputy President William Ruto and Raila Odinga have finally somehow mysteriously come together and agreed on something. On an issue like police brutality, I really wonder if there's any leader out there who would be supporting the current situation. I mean, everyone is speaking against police brutality, whether it is to the civilians or to the politicians. And I think the reason why it's news is also because there is an anticipation that even if you're in government and something is going wrong in government, you're not supposed to speak up. Mm-hmm. I find that very strange because as a good leader, one of the things that you should be able to do is call out certain things that are wrong within the administration organization that you are in. So for Deputy President William Ruto speaking out, I would be very disappointed actually if he was quiet because remember on past events, he has been seen to play a to take a back seat on certain issues, and people have been saying, why are you not speaking out? And absolutely, he should start speaking out on things that are wrong, because whether or not he's in government, as a good leader, you should be able to have a critical, independent mind that says, actually, I could be part of this government, but what is going on is not right. And as his tweet said, he actually said, the people of Kenya, the voters of Kenya did not go to the polling station so that they could support this kind of acts from the police. So speaking out from the deputy president is actually is what I expect that he does more and more. But I also think people should stop looking at politicians on the political divide and start talking about the issues, because if you look at it from an issue perspective, then I should see more and more leaders, not only him, cabinet secretaries should have come out, Ministry of Interior should come out and speak out against police brutality, because he does not condemn, he's not supporting it. So speaking out doesn't mean that you're against your line manager or your government. It simply means you still have reason, you still understand that this is issue-based, and you're actually coming out to say, I could be part of this, but I have to speak out against the wrong that they're doing. That
actually provides a perfect segue. We wanted to take this as far as justice is concerned. Justice, even as you see what Raila is saying, what Dr. Ruto is speaking about, there's also a very conspicuous silence from the people who actually were at the helm of this particular operation, so to speak. Yesterday, it was reported in the dailies that CS Matiang'i, IG Mutiambai, snubbed summons by the House on this particular issue. They were asked this question by the press, and they had nothing to say on this, even as the operation was ongoing. Very curious silence as this happens in the full glare of the media to leaders of that particular stature, you think?
Let me, from where my I've left it, the deputy president who is the deputy president, ideally is the de facto opposition leader in this country. Raila, the opposition leader, but de facto prime minister of the deputy president of this country operationally. But in terms of the ideals of the constitution, you know, Raila is opposition leader. In terms of the letters and of the constitution, the deputy president is number 2. But in terms of how the country operates at the moment, he is practically it's been sidelined to be the de facto opposition leader. So I think the coming together of the perspective of Raila Odinga and Dr. Ruto is by default, not by design. It is just a coincidence that they have shared, you know, a common perspective in terms of what we have called the police brutality, and in terms of why the CS, the Inspector General, and the mandarins that run the security sector seem to say that they have no comment, is because you know, there's the interest of what famously the media is calling the deep state seem to coincide with what the police are doing now in terms of trying to bulldoze the Senate to have you know, to pass through this particular revenue division sharing bill. And that is why, you know, in most of the African countries, the police are usually the errand boys of government and those who are enjoying the levers of power. And therefore, what the police have been doing is what a typical average country, you go to Uganda, you go to Tanzania, and most of these countries in Africa, usually the policemen are typically the right-hand blue-eyed boys of the government. So what the police have done is not strange, including, in fact, if you see what the policemen have been doing in the United States of America recently, they've been behaving like the errand boys of the president or the government of the day. I do not want to be specific on that matter, but you see, generally, the policemen have been misused all over the country. I mean, more than half of 50% of the countries in the world today, as we speak, from China, from America, and most of the countries, you seem to, see this obtaining and running narrative of the policemen being used for political ends, to achieve a political end.
And as we look at this particular issue of the police being used to achieve political ends on this one, some people aren't as sympathetic with what's going on right now in terms of what's befalling the Senate or Parliament as well in terms of this excessive use of force by the police. Some people are saying this is really what you had coming. Now you deserve to experience what every other Kenyan is experiencing. Let's go back 2 years. Miguna Miguna being deported. And we have Senator Murkomen talking about the fact that this had to be done because one right of one particular individual couldn't harm 45 million Kenyans' rights. Now he's on the receiving end of what he was trying to defend back then. And some people are saying, if it was good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Don't complain when you're getting that particular treatment. What's your take on that, Dennis?
Yeah, I think that question comes when I was about to tell you that, you see, these politicians are not being honest. Because we have had these instances of police brutality and for a very long time. One case is Miguna Miguna. We had post-election processes where people were killed, Baby Pendle and others were assaulted. People were murdered, but we didn't hear the political class coming out strongly. We had protesters in Nairobi and police were very harsh on every, innocent politicians. And what did we hear from those who were in Jubilee? Then the Murkomen and the rest, they were okay with it. And they said, we are affecting the economic environment of Nairobi, and therefore everybody should be silenced for whatever it is. And the manner in which it was happening by the police, they didn't have a problem with it. So the question arises today, is Deputy President Ruto and the top leaders feeling sad because it's senators, or is it because it was common manage? We have many people who get assaulted by common manage. In fact, there was a clip doing rounds by a lady somewhere in Kericho who was being pulled on by a police officer, tied to a motorcycle and being dragged on the road. That for me is the worst case, but it just died. Apart from probably law side of Kenya taking it up, it just went down. So I think we should be making laws for the Kenyans, not for the president, not for the senators who are in office, not for parliamentarians. We have many other ills. Today, if there was anybody who has been brutalized by the police, it was Miguna Miguna. But that it ended. We justified it and it went quiet. He's doing what he's doing, wherever it is, and we have let it go. It's the president. It will come to haunt somebody tomorrow. So we should be able, we've seen systematically, for example, government, snapping institutions. You've just mentioned, and it's right, that it's true that when the Cabinet Secretary for Interior was summoned by the Senate, he snapped the summons. It's not the first time, he has always been doing it. But are we building institutions, or are we setting bad precedents? We have other ills, corruption scandals that have been there every day, apart from police brutality. And these leaders are not speaking about them. And that brings me to my probably final comment on that particular issue, on the same thing, that if we were to say that every leader should talk about it, it's a good thing. But who will implement it? Because we have people in government who should be able to ensure it does not happen. So if the president is the one out speaking about against police brutality, then we should ensure it is not happening. Right. The people in government, the deputy president, the ministers, the president, cabinet secretaries, and anybody who is in government, they are all, other than speaking, is to ensure that we don't have this brutality. And if it's happening, ensure that he's taking practical steps to ensure that it does not happen again. That is not happening. So speaking for me is more of a political gimmick. It's more of, trying to appeal to the masses that you are against this, but in reality, you are not.
Gloria, I'll remind you of another politician, Dindi Nyoro. That post comes up every single time something happens, when he's asking the president to be a benevolent dictator, rule by fist, because he needs to do that. Clearly very silent with all that's going on right now. We also have a silent president. And it seems like And above law, when you look at the CSs and the IG, who brings these people to account? Because essentially, ideally, Parliament should be the one checking the powers and bringing the CS and his IG to account and oversight what they're doing. But it seems like these two people are above the law. How do we remedy this situation right now practically?
This whole situation reminds me of that saying, first they came for the socialists and I did not speak out, and then they came for the trade unionists, and then the Jews, and then there was nobody to speak for the rest of the people. So in itself, it's a paradox, because yes, there has been a lot of police brutality to the civilians, against the civilians, and there's been a lot of police brutality that has been ignored because simply those people apparently are the lowest in the food chain, they don't matter. And we never had our politicians come up strongly and be passionate like they did in the Senate and really talk about, you know, we must be protected, this is our right to, you know, conduct our affairs, and, you know, all those things they were saying. So in itself, it's like a blessing in disguise for Kenyans, particularly for the youth, because a lot of the people who have negative interaction with police are the youth. And sometimes maybe it takes the actual brutality to the lawmakers, to the policy implementers, for them to understand this is wrong and it can actually happen to me, so I must start doing something. Unfortunately, I feel that once the politicians have whatever they were pushing for, you know, their rights according to their spaces have been protected and they're okay. Unfortunately, I feel that's as far as their advocacy goes on to. And very few of these politicians are passionate about literally following up till the end. I want to speak about the comments of Martha Karua, because to me, Martha Karua is the ultimate iron lady, as we put her. She's the person who you can trace back 20 years, and she has been consistently passing the same message and standing for the same ideologies. And there's a time she actually said that, you know, when you have no one holding any institutions or judiciary, or nobody is holding anyone accountable, the systems are not functioning the way they should function. The government is not literally doing what it's supposed to do, even on the bare minimum. The citizens are very fatigued. Kenyans are very fatigued on, you know, there's nobody coming to rescue us. There's nobody who's going to be listening to our plights. There's a lot of corruption that you know, literally even nowadays it's the norm for the corruption. Before, we used to even see cabinet secretaries, when there's a scandal of a certain level, being told step down, even if really they are not necessarily directly involved. The duty of care ended there, and it was like, step down, we are conducting this. We don't see that anymore. Mutahi Kagwe is still giving us his COVID-19 updates. He's not been asked to resign, and with all the scandals that are going on with the COVID-19 funding. Suddenly, it's like nothing really matters. No one is really holding anyone accountable. No one really cares about the plight of the people, to the extent that I really think we are really trading on dangerous grounds. Because as you've seen what Mali, the situation that's happening in Mali, it's really pushing, you're pushing a population to a corner, to a point where they will literally realize we've exhausted all levels of trying to get our issues sorted out. We've exhausted judiciary, parliament, government agencies, we've exhausted civil society. And so we're at the point where if we're on our own, we better go to the streets. So I think bringing it back to this police brutality, that's just one issue that has finally hit the legislatures, for them to realize, oh my goodness, this is what Kenyans face every time. What about the corruption? What about the marginalization of youth in terms of employment and all opportunities? What about all these other issues which they don't necessarily feel, but they're actually happening? That should be the question. What next?
Okay.
Yeah.
And as we get into our first break, I want to bring Justice in very quickly on this one. We have a minute or so, even as we get to the first break of the show, Justice, because as she's pointed out, there are very many other issues that Kenyans are wishing their leaders would speak more loudly about and take more action about. Specifically in point, let's talk about the COVID-19 funds and the debacle and scandals that have gone on how this particular issue is being sorted out. But very curiously, again, former PM Raila Odinga hasn't said much on this one, and we know what stance is usually taken when he's passionate about something. And various leaders right across the board really not touching this particular issue, even as the pandemic continues to ravage the country, both health-wise and on the economy. Why this silence, and how do you expect this particular issue to end?
Well, the tragedy is that we have turned as a country the issue of COVID-19 into a very huge, business enterprise. And most people today, if you go to so many institutions that are charged with the responsibility of fighting this pandemic, you will hear about, invoices to do with, sanitizers. You will hear an invoice about supplying these. It has been suddenly turned into a very huge market for the entrepreneurs in this country. And for the national, and for those who are playing the league of the national, most of them, if you, listen to the story of COVID-19 millionaires, you realize that some of these big political players have registered companies that have won tenders worth billions and billions of Kenyan shillings. And therefore, to expect some of these political leadership of this country to come out and viciously and noisily combat the misuse of COVID funds, I do not expect it to be too much to expect of them to do anything, because the biggest beneficiaries of COVID loot, if you follow it keenly, some of these, big-time political leadership and senior government officers who have registered companies through proxies and are now the biggest suppliers of tools for use in terms of fighting COVID-19. So, to me, there are a lot of senior political leaders in this country who are directly benefiting from the opportunities and exactly the ungodly business opportunities that have been offered by this pandemic. And therefore, their silence speaks volume. I do not expect much from them unless Kenyans unite and speak in one voice and demand accountability in terms of the funds that have been allocated to combat COVID-19. Anything else is to expect too much from the leadership of this country, who clearly, if you've seen the names of some of these characters who have benefited, some of them are very close relatives of some of the big-time leaders of this country. Some of them are close friends of some of these senior government officials. Some of them are close relatives and functionaries of senior political leadership of this country. So, to me, I don't expect much, but I expect Kenyans to rise up,
Okay, that will bring us to our first break right here on the show as well. Even as we take your feedback at K24 TV, at I am Jeff Mote as well. Send that in, of course, as we look at that right here on the show. But even as we talk about the political intrigues of the day, let's not forget the revenue still has not been allocated. How do they get this one out of the woods? We get into the nitty-gritties of that as well right here on the show. Even as we do that, we'll take your feedback. And don't forget, you can get yourself a copy of your People Daily. As it discusses issues, you can also be fully clued in on this and get the paper from the luxury of your phone wherever you are across this country. And the number that you need is *550*4#. Once again, that number *550*4#. Dial that number, get yourself a copy of your People Daily. It's brought to you by the PD and Safaricom. So get that copy, find out all the big stories as we discuss them right here on the show. We are back after the break.